Hi, and welcome to the I Teed Myself podcast. My name is Matthew Miniman, and this is episode 141. What can Graboids teach us about archiving? So, Graboids. These are some of the smelliest, dumbest, weirdest, oldest, stinkiest motherfuckers on the planet. They are gross as hell. They eat everything. They are dumb. They only sense movement through seismic vibration. They can grow up to 30 tons, 30 feet long, over 6 feet tall. Like, these are some massive motherfuckers. Or at least that's what the media series Tremors would have you believe. Starting with the movie Tremors in 1990, the Graboids were introduced as a worm-like species of predator that basically hunt using seismic vibrations. They lay in wait and hide and eat whatever they can get their mouths around, whether it be a rabbit, an elephant, humans, a car. They'll eat anything they can get their mouths on, but basically they eat anything that moves. So if it's moving on the ground, it's going to get eaten up by this graboid. But that kind of begs the question is how, when with these graboids and them eating everything, how did they not detect these things earlier? Well, if you've never seen Tremors or the Tremors media series at all, definitely check it out. It's a film from 1990. It stars Kevin Bacon as Val and exists around this town called Perfection, Nevada. And basically what ends up happening in this film is that initially Val and Earl are leaving to go to another town to go help out because the work in Perfection is completely there's no work to be had, so they're going to go up to Bixby. And as they're driving up to Bixby, they notice some dude in a power on a power line, and ends up he's dead. And so they recover his body and bring him to the doctor. And the doctor's like, oh, he died of dehydration. Don't know why you would do that. Turns out he was afraid of what was lurking underneath the ground, which were these graboids. Now, I won't ruin the rest of the movie, mainly because there's not really a whole lot else to ruin. I'm sure you can imagine the rest of it just from the basics of the movie. But ultimately, graboids are these worm-like creatures that exist underground, and they are strong as hell. Like, they are hard to kill. 50 caliber rounds, dynamite, nothing kills them. They are almost impossible. The only way to survive them is to not move or find hard bedrock to exist on so that they can't dig underneath and then eventually swallow you. So this is kind of weird, like, how did these things exist? They've obviously been there for a while. They've obviously been in existence, but how were they not noticed? Why were they not identified? And part of it is because they lie in wait. They are migratory to a point, and they're also they hibernate up to hundreds of years. And so, these things obviously woke up in 1990 and started killing massively, indiscriminately, killing anything they could get their mouths on. And so this is similar to how objects inside of your environment can exist and act. And it's not just one type of object. And what we mean by this is that when you have an environment such as Active Directory, or even a physical environment where you have resources like a computer or monitor or whatever, if they are active and in place to activate, they can cause issues. It can be a significant problem. So, for instance, let's roll back and think about an environment which we have. We have a company that's existed for a long time. Let's say they've existed for 20 years, and throughout this company's evolution over the last 20 years, they've used computers, they've hired people, they've fired people, people have been let go, people have died, people have joined, lots of drama. Who knows what happened to this company? It's crazy. This company does a lot of things. It's a company. It's doing business. But ultimately, this company hires and fires people. And what happens is they may not delete the user objects that are inside of their Active Directory environment. Because, of course, they're a business and they have an Active Directory environment. That's how they maintain login credentials and logs and all of that. And so as they exist they've just sort of accumulated these accounts, and some of them have aged out. Some people have retired and not rejoined, and this company has done a really bad job of doing any sort of maintenance on those accounts. Well, fast forward, after its creation, after you've done this for 20 years, you've got several dozen accounts that probably nobody's ever used and exist in a state which is unmonitored. And so what happens if one of those accounts has a bad password, or the password has been reused somewhere, or an attacker gains access to it? Those then become vectors of attack. Those become possible vectors for attack. And that's an issue that a lot of organizations run into, is they don't properly archive accounts as they become out of date or unused, or the people the people associated with those accounts were deleted or removed or whatever. Delete a person. No, we don't do that anymore. If you have users that leave the company, people that are fired or whatever, it is vital to deactivate their accounts and to archive them appropriately, and to come up with a method of archiving. And it's not just people. There are lots of different objects that behave in the same way. For instance, there are physical objects such as computers or laptops or phone systems. There are HVAC utilities, things like that. HVAC devices, power devices, boiler devices, all things that can harm an environment if they aren't taken care of and properly sunsetted after use. I'll give you the example. There was a telecommunications company, and this telecommunications company existed from the early 20s on. And in the early 20s, telephones were just becoming a thing. And as technology improved, this company also improved with the technology. This is a national company. And as this company has improved and the technology has improved and whatnot, a lot of systems get updated and a lot of systems are put in. But this particular company didn't remove some of the old systems that were in place. Specifically, what they didn't remove was a PBX handler for phone line distribution. And what ended up happening is that at some point, this distribution system got hooked up to the internet, either purposefully or inadvertently or accidentally. Nobody knows. But what ended up happening is, because this PBX exchange got hooked up to, or this PBX interface got hooked up to the internet, it was then accessible. And what ended up happening is an attacker got a hold of this specific device and was able to bring down a large swath of communication over a wide region of the United States. We're talking about a massive outage over the East Coast. Now, there's a significant amount of other things that have to happen and that had to have gone wrong, but it all starts with not properly archiving and identifying resources within an organization to properly remove them. This is a problem across almost every type of organization you can imagine. If you aren't properly looking at your devices that are in use and removing those that are no longer in use, you can absolutely run into an issue. I will tell you that I have done maintenance on some hospitals where, if you go into their telecom room that they typically have in the basement, there's stuff in there from the 70s still to this day. And we're talking 50 years later. There's stuff from the 70s still plugged in with the lights on. It's probably not doing anything, but who knows? I definitely don't, because I don't operate. I'm not an expert on any of that system. I don't have any idea. But it is a point where you can see these devices have a potential risk. In that same hospital system, one of the things that you'll see in specifically hospitals that have been around for a while is you'll see that they have a bunch of random ports on the wall. And some of them look pretty technical, like there'll be a parallel port, 25 pin parallel port on a wall. And most organizations just kind of ignore that. Some even just like paint over it. Like it just doesn't even, like it's not even anything. Like it's just part of the wall. We're just going to paint over it. That's fine. Fully fine. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a piece of technology. Paint over it. And like, but what does that go to? Like, what is that attached to? Now that parallel port is probably part of an old HL7 communication port that is no longer in existence. It probably only goes directly to the nurse's station. That is right up the hallway to that specific hospital room. But you don't know that. Nobody knows that because it's not properly documented. And that parallel port should be removed if not in use, because otherwise, if it does go to something that is still in use or still in existence or still has some sort of connectivity to the internal systems of that hospital, it can lead to an event where a compromise occurs from an unknown source, and it is almost impossible to stop because nobody knows what is where. And that's the important part, because if you don't know what is in your organization, what objects exist inside of your organization, how are you going to defend against them? Now, there's a layered security approach to this where you should make sure that you have principle of least privilege. You should have access reviews, things like that. You should definitely follow device isolation and firewalling and VLANing and isolation of VLANs, all of that good stuff that you do in a long-term environment. But if you're not doing the basics of archiving your accounts properly, or even archiving and deprecating unused equipment, you're probably not doing the other stuff with your layered security environment properly either, which is a good reason to do all of these things. Again, it's not about just doing this once. It's not about making sure that it's taken care of once. It's a continual involvement and investment in your organization. Not only that, but a lot of this archiving and deprecation and removal of unused products or goods is a good practice in that it will help you identify when there is a problem or when there's something that is out of place, because you don't have all of this noise of external data, of external resources, of unused stuff laying around. I will tell you, one of the hardest things that I had to do was clean up the server room for this hotel. This hotel had been in existence for 100 years, and basically it had everything upgraded throughout those 100 years. But for every piece of technology that they brought in, they never threw anything out. So this server room still had gobs and gobs of telecom equipment. And we're talking things like dial-up phones. We're talking servers running off of 7.5-inch floppy disks. It was an insane amount of hardware and data. Honestly, you could have opened a museum with everything they had in there. And going through each and every item, being like, is this something that we can throw away? Is this something that we no longer need? While it was easy because the vast majority of the stuff was old equipment that wasn't in use and only the new stuff was there, it was very difficult to even identify the stuff that was in use and could be used because there was so much there. And again, if you're an organization that doesn't do this, doesn't archive your stuff properly, that doesn't deprecate your stuff properly, you're going to get to a situation where in an emergency or in an environment where you have to do work, it's going to be that much harder to progress to the next step. And it can get difficult to step on top of it, to get on top of it, because, and this is true, because it takes so much work to get the thing done, you're really only focused on getting the thing done and not all the additional stuff like, hey, I need to work on cleaning this room up. And you're like, nope, I just want to get in and out. I want to get back to my regular job. And so it does take concerted, concentrated effort to hunt these things down, because if you don't, you're going to end up with a town that's being terrorized by these goddamn worms. And the only way to then get rid of them is you're going to have to figure out a way to blast them with dynamite in such a way that they careen off a cliff and die. Or you shoot them enough to where they then finally perish to the massive hail of gunfire. Or Who knows? Maybe they end up evolving into a bigger threat that you don't even know how to handle. And that is why you need to kill the Graboids as soon as they come out. Well, I hope that was entertaining for you. That's all I got time for today, guys. Hope you all have a great day.